And Ryan, you can still...
What a way to go. What we don't know is...
CrowdStrike's motto is every second counts, and that's why GT World Challenge and CrowdStrike go hand in hand. But like the changing of the seasons, the motorsport season must come to an end in the real world, but it doesn't have to end virtually. Welcome to the first race of the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League for friends and family to connect while everyone works from home. CrowdStrike and AWS have been leaders in securing a remote workforce since long before the pandemic, and they can race remotely too, and are glad to have staff take part. Welcome to CrowdStrike Racing. My name is Kyle Heyer, joined by Ryan Marine tonight for our first round of the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League. Ryan, welcome. This is going to be another fun foray into Assetto Corsa Competizione competition, but this time with CrowdStrike and AWS employees all going head-to-head in some fun racing on a Thursday night.
Yeah, really excited to be a part of this, Kyle. Thanks so much to you and to everybody who has brought us along for the ride. Can't wait to see what we have in store. ACC always puts on a great show, and it's a great foray, as you said, into sim racing. Several of our drivers throughout the night have plenty of sim racing experience. Others are just getting their toes in the water, but I suspect the bug will bite, and they'll be back for a whole lot more.
Well, we've got a couple different races coming up tonight. It's all going to kick off in just a little while. About 15 minutes from now, we're going to start our pro race, and then later tonight we'll have our AM race, and basically just the level of competition that the drivers wanted. They could select the more competitive race or the less competitive race just to have some fun. The pro race will begin at 6:20 Pacific time. The AM race will begin at 6:50 Pacific time. So we're just about ready to roll into our pro race qualifying. But first, let's talk about the racetrack we're at here, Ryan. This is the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit. It's fast, it's twisty, and it's a great international racing circuit and a great place to start our first round of the season.
Exactly so. The Nürburgring has so much history. Some of the earliest racing in Germany has taken part in this part of the country. And then, of course, the famous Nordschleife that's been around for decades at this point. This, though, like you mentioned, is the Grand Prix circuit. This layout has been around since 2002. Current race lap record held by Max Verstappen in a Red Bull set earlier this year, because this, of course, is the home of the German Grand Prix.
Lots of tight, twisty corners. It's all going to start with that hairpin turn number one, a very sharp downhill right-hander into the Castrolets that's carrying speed through turns number 2, 3, and 4. Double left-handers into a very sharp right leading towards Ford curve. That'll be a left-right combination all the way down to the hairpin on the far side of the racetrack. Then the high-speed section. You're going to throttle up, get through the gears. 5th and 6th, sweep left, then right. Schumacher S, then RTL curve and pit curve. Another left-right combination that leads into the NGK chicane on the backside of the racetrack, and we'll round things out at the very tail end of the lap with another sweeping right-hander. So it is a lap that takes you just under 2 minutes here, Ryan, and it's going to be a fun race to watch tonight. We're going to have just about 20 drivers in our pro race. We've also got two of us up here plus one. We've actually got Adam Chug with us here tonight joining us, and of course Adam Chug is your official title, Adam, is the AWS Global Solutions Architect. Now, that's a fancy title, but tell us a little bit about what you do at AWS.
Yeah, definitely. Sure. So I really focus on media entertainment customers. So my job is to come up with really interesting ways for us to use all the AWS technology to make interesting things for media and entertainment customers. And I've been working with SRO now for the year, and these are some of the things we came up with. Kind of being able to do broadcasts and being able to do more on-screen graphics for the races in real life. So it's been a lot of fun.
Well, Adam, thanks so much for joining us here tonight. Tell us about your involvement in putting this event together. I know you've got a kind of a bug for racing in general, and we're super glad to have you here. But what was your involvement like getting this all put together and getting us here this evening?
Yeah, definitely. So, so I'm an amateur racer myself, but really what happened at the beginning of this year is we had a lot of plans, and then as everything happened, right, COVID hit. So we had to figure out what we were going to be able to do, and kind of worked with Robbie and the team at SRO. And kind of we wanted to learn how to be able to do these broadcasts out of AWS and make it really efficient for everybody at home. So we were able to use kind of all of our technology and services, kind of design the architecture, helped everybody put it together, build it, test it. And I think we had it out within a week, and they were able to broadcast, everywhere from, Australia to the EU to the US.
Well, obviously, producing a virtual race when everyone is at home is sort of a challenge. You've got people at all corners of the country. So, what are the challenges there in kind of getting data from point A to point B? And I'm in Chicago, Illinois right now. I'm sure there's lots of others that are not from Chicago, Illinois, but we're all here enjoying the same event together. So, how does that production sort of come together?
Well, the interesting thing when you have to deal with this is that the rules of physics still apply, and the speed of light is still a real thing. So there's always latency, which is, the time it takes to get from point A to point B involved with doing these things. So like you said, being able to get from Chicago to broadcast your stream to somebody in Italy, that's still a big distance. Thankfully, we were able to kind of design something that was cohesive to using all of the Amazon services, got us on our backbone and ran across our global network at a really high rate of speed and really low latency connections. And that, really helped make this a really seamless broadcast for a lot of people.
Adam, this is so cool to me to have you here and to watch this and see all your the fruits of your labor come together here tonight. And racing is such an interesting thing, and we're so proud and glad to have CrowdStrike and AWS working together here. And of course, CrowdStrike and AWS sort of share this relationship where they kind of pat each other on the back. Tell me a little bit about how that all kind of functions, because I know AWS is involved with a whole lot more with CrowdStrike and SRO.
Yeah, definitely. CrowdStrike's been a great partner for us at AWS. I got brought into this with CJ, who's our VP of security, kind of doing a partnership with CrowdStrike and AWS with SRO. CrowdStrike offers really great cloud security, and it's one of our preferred partners. So it's really great to be able to collaborate with them both, with our customers and being able to offer them really cool services, but also be able to kind of kick back and have fun and show what the other aspects of what we do is.
Well, Adam, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you watching tonight, and make sure you sit back and enjoy the race tonight. We'll be kind of enjoying ourselves watching this race as well. It's going to be a fun night. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks again for being here.
Yeah, definitely. Really glad to be a part of it. And I promise if anything breaks, it's not my fault.
It'll probably be my fault, unfortunately. Adam, thanks so much. Have a great night, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.
So, Ryan, while we were talking to Adam, and again, thanks to Adam for joining us, we've got about 5.5 minutes left in qualifying. So, essentially, this is a time trial where drivers are going to lay down the fastest lap time they can, and that will set the starting grid for our race coming up here in just a little while. There's about 21 cars here, so qualifying tonight will be fairly important. You want to start ahead of as many cars as possible to make your job a little easier.
That's right. That's the obvious perk of starting up front, but the other one would be, especially at a track like this where turn one really funnels down from a wide racetrack into a pretty narrow part of the racetrack, and specifically the part of the track you want to be on in that part of the corner, it tends to lead to some collisions, right? So starting out front helps you put a few more cars behind you perhaps to eliminate the chance of some of those collisions. So definitely an important sector of our night here is this qualifying session. Interesting to watch the lap times continue to come down. Josh Staffen at the moment, the fastest of our drivers here so far, and has put up the fastest time that I've seen. We caught some of the practice session that led into qualifying, and the fastest times were in the 155 bracket. Josh able to get under 155, as was one of the S. Michaels. We actually have two. We've got a Sam Michaels and a Scott Michaels. So which one is which, I'm still trying to figure out. We'll get to that in a moment. There's the answer for us on screen. Scott Michaels with a very fast lap, also under 155 at this point. That's a very good lap time around the Grand Prix circuit here at the Nürburgring.
So there is Scott Michaels in the number 4 CrowdStrike Mercedes-AMG GT3. Looks awful similar to the one we see on the racetrack in the real world. There's Sam Michaels in a identically prepared number 16 car. That's not going to be challenging at all. It's going to be a lot of fun to separate those drivers here tonight. So we've got our qualifying. We've got our pro race starting in just a couple minutes. Again, we're going to have our AM race after, so this is not going to be the extent of the racing action tonight, so make sure that you stick around a little bit later. Of course, some more information about CrowdStrike and AWS. Of course, CrowdStrike and AWS share that 360-degree relationship that Adam touched on earlier. CrowdStrike runs on the AWS cloud, and AWS uses CrowdStrike to secure its servers. And CrowdStrike is an AWS premier partner and extends its suite of security offerings to all AWS customers and makes AWS the most secure cloud in the world. So really a pleasure to be part of this fun evening event. You get people in the race cars, and you sit alongside the sidelines, you watch racing all season long, Ryan, but sometimes it's fun to get behind the wheel of a virtual car and play along for a bit. And with the two different levels of competition tonight, I think every driver out there is going to have someone to race with, and they'll probably have a smile on their face at the end of the night.
And that's what it's all about here in the sim racing world. It's that experiential part of the sport that really until the last couple of decades was never available for so many people who grew up watching racing and wondering what it was like to drive a pure thoroughbred racing car. You really never had that chance until some of the early simulations that came on, I don't know, 30 years ago or something like that. But really only in the last 10 years did you get to the level of realism that we see now, where you talk to real professional race drivers and they will tell you that these sims really are tools for them in preparation going into a real-life race weekend. And that's exactly what we have here with Assetto Corsa Competizione, one of a handful of sims that do that. But this one, so focused on GT racing, and if you're looking for a realistic GT3 and GT4 experience, look no further. The looks, the sights, the sounds, everything about the cars is done with such attention to detail. And the same can be said with the circuits, laser scanned for accuracy. And so if you're looking for immersion in a GT racing simulation, ACC is about as good as it gets.
Yeah, I don't think you can get much better than this, especially in the sound department. Assetto Corsa Competizione really makes you feel like you're at the racetrack and gives that feeling of sitting on the sidelines and watching a field of GT cars go thundering by. So a minute and a half left in qualifying. The quickest driver, as you alluded to earlier, Josh Staffen at the top of the board from Champion Motorsports in the number 230. Scott Michaels and Sam Michaels second and third in the 4 and 16 CrowdStrike AWS Mercedes-AMG GT3s. Chris Walsh in the number 911 Porsche, he sits in fourth, and Zachary Kunin in the number 300. That's that Lamborghini Huracan. That is a cool looking car. The wedge-shaped Huracan Evo GT3, he's in fifth. Then Sam Parmett in the number 98, he rolls in sixth. And Robbie Montanola, our very own, runs seventh. Vadim Mola and Jeff Corral, Bill Clark, the last drivers in the top 10 right now.
Gotta love the variety that you find in GT3 racing. And if you're new to the sports car racing scene, GT3 basically is a set of rules that the SRO pioneered, the SRO being the Stefan Rattel organization. They're the organization behind GT World Challenge America, where CrowdStrike Racing does a lot of its racing. George Kurtz raced in the Pro-Am category this year, finished second at GT World Challenge America. And the GT3 rules basically provide a manufacturer an opportunity to display the capabilities of their production vehicles in a racing format. And the rules are as such that they have a balancing aspect to them to basically take cars that are very different in performance and appearance, like the Porsche, for instance, compared to a Bentley or a McLaren or a Acura NSX, and put them in an even playing field, or a Mercedes-AMG as we're seeing right here. And so because of the balance of performance that's in place, you can race a Porsche, you can race a Bentley, you can race a Lamborghini, take your model, your make and model of choice. You can take them out here onto a racetrack and race on even footing. And it's led to a great deal of success all around the world. It's a truly global platform, and excited to see that now as it makes its transition into the virtual realm as well.
So on the left-hand side of the screen, you've got your timing and scoring tower, and of course the left-hand side, those numbers that you see, those are the positions of the cars. The driver with the red number box around it on the far left, that is actually the car that we're focused on. So if we jump up to Scott or Sam Michaels, you can see how the red jumps up to the second place car, so that'll help you kind of figure out where we're looking during the field. So right now looking at second place Scott Michaels. Then the manufacturer is that next column that you're going to see. And if I could get my telestrator here. So this is basically the column with the manufacturer. And then you've got the car number, which the colors that correspond with those numbers are not really relevant for the racing tonight. And of course, the final column is the difference between the race leader and the driver that you're looking at. So basically 87 thousandths of a second between the top two, as Sam Michaels, I think, went a little quicker that time. Indeed he did, a 1:54.567. That's less than a tenth of a second, I should say, between the top two drivers. That just goes to show you how close it is in this very competitive field.
remarkably close. And again, this qualifying session sets the starting order for our race, which is coming up in just a moment. You can also see now on this screen the lap time and how it's achieved. Basically, the track is broken down into 3 different sectors, and we can go through that more a little bit later. But impressive qualifying run there from Josh Staffen. Kind of funny because, Kyle, he was complaining a little bit about that NSX to us, said it really wasn't working around this Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit all that well, but not sure I believe you, Josh, with a lap like that.
154.480 puts him to the top of the board over Sam and Scott Michaels in the 16 and 4 cars, only off by a couple tenths of a second. The field gridding up right now to get rolling. They're going to have an opportunity to pace around, get the tires and brakes warmed up, but there is your starting lineup on the left-hand side of your screen. And Ryan, as we get ready for this 25-minute race, the big discussion every time we come to the Nürburgring is the first corner. Of course,
yes.
It is that really tight hairpin corner.
Exactly, and it invites trouble. I talked about it earlier. This front straightaway here, the pit straight, pretty wide. The entry into turn 1 also is wide, but it's pretty specific about where you want to place that car in order to have the ideal racing line through the opening sequence of corners. And so as the cars go in with a great rate of speed, everyone checks up, gets hard on the brakes in that heavy braking zone for turn number 1. The field constricts, and everyone is funneling towards the same piece of real estate, and that's why it is so inviting and so troublesome. We see that not just in sim racing, but if you watch the Formula One races here at the Nürburgring, very similar oftentimes as well. It's a fraught moment every time the race begins, and this field goes roaring into the first turn here at the Nürburgring, especially so.
And you can see on the left-hand side of your screen between the wall and the cars that rubber marbles that builds up between the vehicle and the wall. That is actually just the shavings of the tires from basically pieces of rubber that fall off these Pirellis as they head down the straightaways and through the corners. And those, they call them marbles because it feels like you're driving on marbles. So you want to stay on the racing line, get as close as you can to the inside of the corner for the fastest way around, and stay off of those tricky marbles that could send you into a spin. So we'll have 25 minutes of racing, about 5 p.m. here in the simulator. Just after 6 o'clock on the Pacific coast right now, as we have a look at our beautiful field. There in the back is, I believe Nate Vincent and Michael Herzen are here from FCP Euro. They've got their Mercedes AMGs lined up, but I think the twin CrowdStrike AWS Mercedes at the front, Sam and Scott Michaels, those are good-looking race cars, and they've got a kind of teammate situation going on up there, Ryan, which I think you're always a little bit stronger with another teammate next to you.
That's true. You don't necessarily think of motorsports as a team sport, but it is not just the pit crew and the engineers working in the garage that you find in the real world, but also on track. You do have team drivers, and they can cooperate a little bit. And here in the sim world especially, there's a very good chance that they're communicating with one another via some form of communication software. So that's definitely to their advantage. Should one encounter a spun race car on the track or something like that, they could warn the other. There's other ways that you can cooperate as well. And starting so close to one another, that definitely is going to add a little bit of security, I have to believe, because teammates are going to make very certain that they do not run into one another on the first lap of the race.
So while we wait for the field to grid, we've actually got CJ Moses, the AWS Deputy CISO, with us here tonight. CJ, you got a copy?
Gotcha. Loud and clear.
Hey, CJ, great to hear from you again. We're about to roll for our first CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League event from the Nürburgring. Super excited to have you back. Of course, you are the AWS Deputy CISO. We've talked with you all season long in the CrowdStrike Racing live streams at the real events in the virtual world today. So first of all, welcome to this really super fun event.
Why, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I like the virtual racing. I like the real racing better. Obviously, that's my forte, but virtual racing here at the Nürburgring tends to be a little bit warmer. Many of the times I've been at the ring, it has not been so kind. So I'm glad to be here when it's just as temperate as sitting on my couch, which I'm just about doing.
All right. Well, of course, you've got intense involvement with AWS, so I've got some questions for you. Let's start with CrowdStrike and AWS. I sort of alluded to it earlier, but how do they fit together and fit into racing specifically? I know that partnership extends pretty deep into all those companies.
So yeah, one of the nice things is that as partners, We're actually, CrowdStrike runs a lot of its infrastructure on, or a lot of its capability on the infrastructure that AWS provides using our services. We use CrowdStrike in order to help provide security for our customers within the cloud environment. We jointly do CXO events, or chief executive officer style events, and as we see the field start to roll. The idea there being is that we, in normal case, we'll actually bring executives out to our race events and, build peer-to-peer relationships with those executives, while at the same time being able to race and, have those executives participate and their families participate in the race we'll put them in the cars, take pictures. Now in the virtual world, we're doing that a little bit more, obviously via Zoom and other types of technologies like that as much as we can. But we do look forward to being able to do these in person again here in the future once the vaccines get out there and we're able to get back face to face with our executives and a lot of our other friends as well.
Well, of course, one of the coolest things I remember from the broadcast this year was the incorporation of AWS Race Vision, a really cool sort of interactive element that shows throughout the race the different cornering speeds, how late drivers are braking. So what are some of the new improvements from AWS that viewers can find on next year's SRO race broadcasts?
So we're obviously going to take Race Vision and we're going to use more of the AWS services to do more predictive analytics. So far, we've done a lot of things that have been taking data and presenting it in a new way, such that you can see it more clearly and more, right on the screen. The idea being is that now we need to take a lot of that data, munge it, and then be able to do predictive analysis. Maybe to the from the standpoint of there's a car that's further back in the field that's much faster than the leaders, and how much time is it going to take them? At what lap do we expect that driver to catch up? Things of that nature. You'll start to see more of the advanced features start to come in. COVID slowed us down this year, but we're not going to let it do it 2 years in a row. So we're already working on those things. And Adam, that joined you earlier, is key to all of that work, as well as some of the others on the SRO team.
Well, Adam was asking how he is your favorite, is how he wanted me to word that question. I think he thinks that you're a pretty big fan of him, and I would agree. I'm a fan of Adam. Are you a fan of Adam?
I'm a huge fan of Adam, and I tell his leadership on a regular basis that if they don't treat him well, I'm going to take him, and he's going to work out of security, doing a lot of things that happen to be dealing with racing.
Well, that's awesome. So how'd you meet CrowdStrike with racing? I know that you had some experience in the TCR car this year, but tell me about how that kind of came about.
Well, our first interaction was that at AWS we have this thing called being an executive sponsor. And I was assigned as CrowdStrike's executive sponsor in the first time, and I don't want to, if the race starts, please interrupt me and go ahead and announce away, and I'll shut up. But I got invited to be the executive sponsor and to an event with CrowdStrike that they were doing at a racetrack. I've been a racer for 15 years plus, so my thought there was this is a good matchup, and it took me to Sonoma, or I met them at Sonoma, and before I even met George Kurtz, they put me in the back of a race car with Mario Andretti. So that was a good introduction to have.
It certainly was a cool introduction. Green flag, the introduction of the green flag for the racing here in the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League. 3 wide already. Sam Michaels on the outside, Scott Michaels on the inside. 3 wide into the first corner, Ryan, as they head down there. Going to try 4 wide now into the first corner.
Oh, look at that lunge up the inside from the Lamborghini. That is good stuff. It was clean. I don't think we had much in the way of contact. The 2 CrowdStrike cars did a great job getting a really big launch there, but Staffen was able to hold them off. Here comes a big move to the inside from the Porsche. I believe that's Walsh right there. A spinner further back. That's one of the FCP Euro cars that's gone around.
That is Michael Herzen. He's gone around and collected a couple other drivers, but out front, Josh Staffen leads the way on the Acura NSX. Sam Michaels and Scott Michaels chasing behind. There's a Porsche that has split the middle. That, as you mentioned, Ryan, is Chris Walsh in the number 911. So a frantic start at the front. They've singled out. The Porsche now splits the CrowdStrike Mercedes as they head towards the far end of the racetrack.
A beautiful start by Walsh in that Porsche, and now starting to pile the pressure onto the back of that Mercedes just up ahead. really impressive to get that kind of start. I think that probably was a sign of a very aggressive driver there in the opening corner. Another reason why that first corner tends to be a trouble spot is that's an area and an opportunity to make up a lot of spots in a short amount of time. And sometimes the risk is worth taking. It appears that was the case for Chris Walsh.
Gotten it done. And CJ, I know you've done some sim racing in the past. Tell us about your home sim racing rig to kind of keep yourself fresh during the off-season.
Absolutely, and that's mostly what I use it for. I don't do a lot of actual sim racing, but I do use it quite a bit. I have a full motion setup because I find that those of us that are a little bit older need the butt feel, if you will. So I've got full motion rig with triple 40-some inch screens around me. So I try to get immersed as much as I can in order to do so. And it really does help. One of the things I'm mindful of is that when I get to the track, I need to have done my homework as much as I can in order to make our chances of doing as well as we can right off the right off the airplane, if you will.
Well, CJ, I want to thank you so much for coming on board with us tonight. We've got a race underway now. I want you to sit back and enjoy it. There's some contact for the lead. So, CJ, thanks so much for being with us, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks again, guys. Enjoy the race.
Thank you. So, Ryan, a frantic start already. Some bumping and banging at the front. Leaning the chrome horn from the Mercedes-AMG GT3. That's Sam Michaels in the 16, putting the pressure on for the top spot at the Nürburgring.
Yeah, Michaels has been really impressive. We talked a little bit about Walsh, able to get up into the third spot, and I think coming around at the back half of that first lap had an off-track moment that really bottled the field up quite a bit. He was able to get back on, but did lose a little bit of time in a couple of positions now, running back in fifth. That's allowed Michaels through, and now Coonan as well in that blue Lamborghini, currently holding down the final podium spot in third and giving chase to Michaels, but he's got a mirror full of the other Michaels with the other CrowdStrike Mercedes right behind.
So single filing out for the top five, but I don't think we're done racing just yet. There's Robbie Montanola in the white Ferrari. Bill Clark behind him in the number 42. He's chasing him down through the left-hander. And you mentioned earlier the diversity in platforms. The Porsche GT3 is sort of a rear mid-engine layout. The Ferrari is mid-engine only. So some different cars competing here. And another thing about the Porsche, it's very tall in comparison to the Ferrari.
That's right. So we talked a little bit earlier about the different rules that apply here in GT3 racing and the balance of performance that allows cars that look so differently, different engine configuration between the two. This is the GT3 version of the 911. So while the GTE version is that rear or that mid-rear engine, as they call it, configuration, the GT3 is more of the traditional 911 with the true rear engine kind of over the rear wheels. That's more true to the road-going car. There is no mid-rear engine road-going 911. That's something that had to be altered specifically for the GTE car. The GT3 car, not just the Porsche, but all of them share their heritage with the road-going cars. And in fact, in the real world, all GT3 cars begin their life coming off of a factory production line, just like any other car from their respective manufacturer. Just some are selected to be transitioned into race cars. But as you can see here, a really good job by Clark putting the pressure on our Robbie Montanola just up ahead. Robbie, who works for SRO America, but did some serious open-wheel racing when he was younger. Raced up against IndyCar star James Hinchcliffe at one point back in the Star Mazda Championship. And under a bit of pressure right now in that Sky Tempesta Racing liveried Ferrari.
Well, Montanola hangs on for now. Just up the road, though, there was a little bit of a scrap going on between Chris Walsh, Sam Parment, and Vadim Mola. And even farther up the road, you see Scott Michaels in that number 4. He's actually gotten back around Zach Coonan in the 300 Lamborghini and sets his sights on Sam in the number 16 Mercedes-AMG GT3. So I think those CrowdStrike Mercedes are going to move forward very quickly. Josh Staffen, though, is just still hanging out in front of Sam Michaels, but it is very, very tight for that top spot.
Yeah, it is. This is great racing up at the front. This is just what we were hoping to come out of our pro race. These are the racers that want to be a little bit more competitive than what we'll see up in the AM race a little bit later on. These drivers probably have a bit more experience either in the real world or in sim racing. Certainly Josh Staffen does have a lot of sim racing experience, but Michaels is really fast, and I suspect if he can find a way by, he'd be able to pull away. Staffen forced to be really defensive, guarding that preferred inside line through turn 1.
A lot of switchbacks here, and I would think that the NSX would be a bit more nimble around this particular point on the racetrack, this sort of stadium section, as some people call it. The Mercedes is sometimes a point-and-shoot race car. It's got a lot of torque and likes to get going on the straightaways, but the Acura, a bit more nimble. You see it gain a little bit of ground here, Ryan, but then the Mercedes, as it goes onto the straightaways, is right in its prime, going to throttle up and chase that NSX down. And clipping the curbs on the left and the right, shortening up the racetrack as much as possible. And in that slipstream, that car in front is actually pushing the air out of the way for the trailing car and making it easier for Sam Michaels to stick up that rear wing.
That's right. So if you've heard about drafting, that's what we're talking about here. The slipstream, the slingshot, it's all the same thing. The shake and bake even from Talladega Nights, right? That's what Sam Michaels is trying to pull off right now. But you'll notice that NSX, it is pretty low to the ground, not a big greenhouse, doesn't punch a massive hole in the air, especially relative to the big old Mercedes AMG that's in hot pursuit.
Through the left-handers now, and now that secondary Mercedes, Scott Michaels has closed that gap. It's now only 3 car lengths between the CrowdStrike Mercedes, and now they're on the fastest point of the racetrack. Sam Michaels in tow and on the attack. And I love watching the onboards of these cars because you can actually physically in the game watch the drivers adjust their brake bias and move the pressure of the brakes more forward or more rearward to gain stability. But here comes Sam Michaels around the outside, side by side through the final corner with the race leader.
That's a tough place to get it done, and it opened the door for his teammate. That doesn't look like 2 teammates working together. This does, though. They might bump draft a little bit here. Down the outside now, the Michaels working their way around, but the preferred line for Staffen, late on the brakes, early to the apex. The number 4 car bouncing off the inside curb there, and it stays the same. Staffen, though, racing for all he's worth right now to try and keep these 2 CrowdStrike Mercedes behind.
Great showings by the Michaels boys right now. Zach Coonan in the 300 car has had an issue. He's dropped all the way back to 10th. He was running as high as 3rd earlier. There's Matt Geffeller in the number 8. Bentley, that's a thundering car. I love watching that. But I don't want to pull away from the front too much because those 2 teammates were running nose to tail. They've separated out now, but it's not going to take very long for them to sort of accordion back together, Ryan, and start that battle all over again.
Staffen has been inch perfect to this point in his defense. It has been a stout rearguard action that he's been fighting to keep these 2 monstrous AMGs behind him. But one little wiggle, one little mistake, and that door is going to be open. I do believe both of the Mercedes are a little bit quicker at this point of the race. And this is a pretty short race at just 25 minutes. There will be some tire drop off. The game does a good job of modeling that. In real life, the longer you run the tires, they lose a little bit of their peak grip that you start with. And so even though you're burning off fuel and the car is lighter, typically what you see is the car losing overall pace over the course of a stint or the length of time that the car can go before needing to refuel. But here, that NSX is very much at risk. Very defensive again through the chicane, but I think that's like waving a red towel at a bull because he can see the weakness, he can sense the weakness up ahead, and is just trying to find a way by.
Nose to tail again as they come onto the front straight. We're 10 minutes in, 15 minutes to go in the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League first round. The pro race, Sam Michaels again with the slipstream, pokes out to the left. Now he jukes to the right. Staffen out of control into turn number 1. He gathers it back up, but is he late on the brakes? He gets through the corner somehow. He runs wide, but the Michaels brothers nose to tail now, exiting turn 1. Spectacular stuff at the front of the field.
Yeah, he was out of control. He might have had a little bit of help. It was tough to say, but there might have been a little bit of a touch. I must say, Michaels was pretty clever there in the 16. He sold him a dummy, looked to the outside as he had the last couple of times. Staffen started to move back outside in order to defend, and all of a sudden, Michaels saw his opportunity, shoved the nose up the inside, and I think in that crossover might have made just slight contact with the rear of that NSX, which sent him on a pretty wild ride, but Sam Michaels was not able to take advantage of it because I think it unsettled his car as well.
Let me tell you something, both the CrowdStrike Mercedes are making a heck of a showing in the CrowdStrike Cup first race of the season, already hounding Josh Staffen, who we've seen in SRO Esports' esport event that we ran earlier in the spring, the GT Rivals events, and Josh Staffen won a handful of those races. He is no slouch, and Sam and Scott Michaels are putting the pressure on. I think they're quicker right now. They just have to figure out how to get around. It's like playing a chess match at 150.
That's exactly what it is, and you're feeling out your opponent here. It's like a boxing match as well, right? You can see where they're weak, you can see where they're strong, and you try and plan your attack accordingly. At this point, it does look like they have the edge on outright speed in the Mercedes, but it just they need to be able to get alongside in the preferred lane in one of these passing zones, and I think it's going to have to happen right here. If they can get a good run out of this final corner into turn one, get that crossover in place, but fighting amongst themselves, that's not going to help the cause of trying to get the CrowdStrike cars up to the lead.
You think Josh Staffen is looking out the windshield right now? I'm pretty sure his eyes are glued to the virtual camera up there on the top of the windscreen into turn number one. He's got both the CrowdStrike Mercedes. He's seeing double behind him on the right-left switch back through the first sector. Oh, more contact.
Oh, look at that little punt. Yeah, you're going to have some of that. And the two Mercedes, they're kind of tired of working together, I think. And you have to believe that maybe each of them feels that they are the fastest of the bunch. And actually, this battle right here is actually letting Parmet get into the mix in that Porsche. Haven't seen that name up towards the front to this point, but a really stout run here by Sam Parmet as of late to claw into that deficit. But yeah, what a great battle up front between the Mercedes and the Acura. And wow, Parmet's got his hands full right there.
That was a big wiggle for the number 98. That's going to bring Chris Walsh back into the mix. Remember, Chris Walsh had that amazing start and jumped up as high as, I believe, at second or third at one point, kind of between the two Mercedes at the front, the CrowdStrike ones of Sam and Scott Michaels. So 1 through 3, all run nose to tail. Last time by, Parmet ran his fastest lap time of 1:55.677, which as of now is the second fastest lap time of anyone in the race. The fastest actually belongs to Scott Michaels in the number 4, running in third.
So if it's me here and I am Sam and Scott Michaels, I'm going to stay in lockstep through this section of the track, even though I do think they are faster, but you just need to set yourself up for a better run down the pit straightaway. So I think the last couple of times they've been compromised through this chicane, this left-right that we're about to go into right here, and then going side by side through the final corner. Rather than doing that, let Staffen take the inside defensive line and get a better run out yourself, because he's compromising his corner by doing that. So far, we have not seen the Mercedes be able to take advantage of it, but they might have a chance to here. Let's see if Michaels can get a run in the slipstream. It doesn't look like he's going to be able to get close enough, and now is stuck trying to make his way around the outside again.
Now that radius is so tight in the first corner that you really can't stay alongside on driver's left. You have to be on the right there, then sweep back to the left for the second corner. A wiggle there on power. Rear wheel spinning out from underneath him, but he gathers it back up, brings the teammate right to the rear bumper again, and it's still 1 through 3, Staffen, Michaels, and Michaels. And last time by, quicker still was Sam Parmet. He was the quickest driver of anyone in the top 5 last time around.
That was even with that tank slapper that he had, a big save at one point. That Porsche is fast. It might be a little bit on the ragged edge, but he is coming, and he is bringing Walsh with him. Walsh has been really impressive, had that great start, dropped back, and has been recovering ever since. I don't know if anybody's got the pace of Parmet, though. Like you pointed out, he's been the fastest car on track the last couple of times around, but Walsh has been able to stay right there on that rear wing, and if anything should go awry up front, it's these two, I think, that are in a prime position to try and capitalize.
So Sam and Scott Michaels continue to run nose to tail behind Josh Staffen. You have to start wondering, you mentioned saving tires. We're past the halfway point. We have 10 minutes to go in this race. How much has Josh Staffen worn out the tires, taking those defensive lines, kind of scrubbing excess speed out of those Pirellis, trying to keep those Mercedes behind him?
That's right. Think about the angle that he's having to take. He's got a shorter radius, a tighter radius by taking that defensive inside line. So that means he's got to crank more wheel into it, and he got up on the curb there, sent him up into the air, and out of the lead back to third. Boy, it felt like he was going to have to be perfect to hold on. Really had been up until that point, but just a little bit too much of that curb, and a great job to save it. But now he's got Parmet breathing down his heels.
Parmet coming to try to grab third place away, but for the race lead, Sam and Scott Michaels in the CrowdStrike AWS Mercedes AMG GT3s going for the top spot. 9 minutes to go after the race leader climbed the curb and shot across the racetrack. He had led the first 5 or 6 laps, but now he's going to have to give that up and ride in third. He might be fast enough to run back by, but Sam and Scott have been so good. They're going to remain nose to tail here. Now I'm curious if Scott can get up there and really challenge his teammate for that lead.
Hey, Kyle, remember we were talking about teammates and how they work together
Yeah.
and they're going to look out for one another. I think that's out the window now with less than 10 minutes left. What about you?
I think so. The problem is Josh Staffen didn't go anywhere. He's still back here, so if they start fighting again, they're just going to have the reverse problem where Josh Staffen will drive right through them because he's not preoccupied trying to defend anymore. He can be on the attack, and watch these two teammates fight for position. That is an opportunity that Josh is not going to pass up.
Sam was a little bit wide in that previous corner. I think Scott now has a bit of a run. Nothing he can really do with it through here. This section of the track is so fast. You have to be so precise into another corner that is deceptively fast here. This left-hander, you can really get up and use that curve. I find it helps to rotate the car a little bit through there. And now, as we come around this sweeping right-hander onto a really long full throttle section of track where the horsepower of the Mercedes comes into play. First through that little right-handed bend, and now a big run up the hill and into the chicane.
And left and right. Oh no, Staffen! A big mistake into the braking zone. He either missed a pedal or something. He just didn't get stopped. That slammed into Scott Michaels. You see the damage on the left-hand side of the car. Or is that Scott Michaels? So Sam Michaels leads the way as we come onto the front straightaway. Scott Michaels with that damage. That's going to be a huge hindrance there. And Staffen is probably going to call it a day. That was a big mistake there. Oh, he's still out there.
That is unlike Josh. He is, but you could tell he let the leaders through. He wanted to get himself sorted out and try and get to the bottom of it. That was a bold move to the inside. There really wasn't a gap there, but Walsh tried to make one. Got up on that curb and was lucky he didn't get into Parmet. Maybe he did just a little bit, but it wasn't too significant. That's the good news there. And Parmet's been watching this thinking, this is exactly what I need. He's starting to close back in a little bit. He's got that gap now to Michaels in front of him down under a second. And with the pace that we've seen out of that Porsche, he could be up there, especially given the fact that at the moment we think Scott Michaels probably does have some damage from that contact earlier.
Could be some suspension damage or some aerodynamic damage that could affect Scott Michaels in that number 4 car. We keep referencing the curbs around here, and those are the red and white striped concrete patches you see on the insides of the corners, and often they have rumble strips built into them, and they're raised up off the racetrack. Get a good look at them there. If you climb up onto those, Ryan, you can actually bottom the car out, and basically the tires aren't touching the ground anymore. You're just scraping the under tray of the car on that concrete curbing, and that is what kind of launches these cars airborne. So you want to be very careful about how you attack the curbs, because you can take too much of them if you try to cut the corner a bit too much.
Case in point, what we saw from Josh Staffen on that last lap where he lost the lead. He got up on that curb, and I think he bottomed out and actually shot him up into the air. He was going so fast. These cars actually make a lot of their downforce, a lot of their grip through the diffuser at the back of the car, which channels air in such a way that it actually creates kind of a suction force. That was a little bit wild there from Parmet, who now all of a sudden finds himself under attack from Staffen, so he goes from the hunter to the hunted really quickly. But to your point about the curves, it's kind of an interesting balance you have to strike, right? Sometimes the curves are really helpful. They help to get the car to be in such a state that it will help the car to rotate the way that you want it to, but some of the curves maybe aren't as helpful as others. Some can be very detrimental, and one of the things that this particular simulation, Assetto Corsa Competizione, does really well, and you like to tell me all about it, Kyle. You're the curb guru.
That's right.
But they do a great job of modeling these curves.
They really do, and you know I can't overstate enough how violent curbing can be, especially in its kind of rumble strip form. I got a chance to drive around Road America, which is notorious for having some pretty gnarly curbing, and it shakes your fillings out. It's pretty nasty stuff, and that was in a Miata. So imagine going 140, 150 miles an hour in a very low to the ground sports car. It's not a pleasant experience, but sometimes you got to clip it just to help the car rotate. And you see right there's a car off on the inside. That's the 23 car of Jackson Rusin in the number 19, or the number 23 rather, Acura NSX. Too much curb there for sure. A little bit of a struggle for Jackson so far today. Let's check around a little deeper in the field. For 13th place, David Anderson. and Hunter Reeve battling for position. That's Ferrari versus Porsche. And it's just outside the top 10.
That's right. Really interesting to see the different makes and models in this field. David Anderson, big thanks to him. His Champion Motorsports group has done a tremendous job helping to facilitate some of this with the work on the back end. That not just here for this particular CrowdStrike League, but also what we do on the SRO side. Big help there. Great to see him in the field. This is Robbie Montanola, as we talked about earlier.
I wanted to point out there's some
SRO
damage on that car. I think he's been around or into somebody.
Yeah, because he was running up in the top 10 towards the start. I think he was up at 8th when we had him on the screen last. So you're right, something has happened. Speaking of things that have happened, the battle for the lead has closed up once again. And damage and all, Scott Michaels is fast. There is no question about that. I speculated earlier that he might be the faster of the two Mercedes, and we're starting to see that play out. Trouble is, only 3 minutes are left on the clock. That's not a lot of time to get it done, Kyle.
No, that'll probably be, taking a look at where we are in the racetrack, this will probably be, next lap will be the last lap around, so Scott's going to have to do a lot of work here to catch back up to Sam. He was within 0.2 of a second. He's lost a big portion that time through, but he was gaining ground. He's backed off now. I wonder, maybe, did he underfuel the car? He's coasting into the corners.
That's an interesting point I hadn't considered. There is an advantage to doing that, of course. The less weight that you carry, obviously it helps with acceleration and braking for reasons that I don't think need to be explained, but also helps with how the car handles as well, carrying a little bit less weight, and where that weight is located. Also the fact that it's a liquid weight, it sloshes around, so the weight is kind of moving at any given point if you're turning left and right or accelerating or braking. So that adds a variability level there. So like I said, there is a reason why you would want to start with as little fuel as possible to make the race distance. But if you end up in a situation where you miscalculated that a little bit, and keeping in mind this is a timed race, it could also be a case of the pace of the race being such that you get more laps in than you were anticipating. That could definitely catch you out.
I think that's what has happened. We saw him heading into the chicane, and you heard the driver lift off the throttle and coast into the chicane. So I think that was the biggest concern maybe for Scott Michaels, is was he going to be able to make it to the end of the race on fuel? What's interesting is that we just hit about 1 minute and 48 seconds ago as we came across the line. So I think this is the final lap here for Sam Michaels. But Scott, if he runs out of fuel, he's got Josh Staffen not too far behind.
Yeah, that's right. He's got to make it all the way around effectively, or otherwise anybody still on the same lap as the lead group would be able to come by. He has a couple of options to try and save fuel. There's the manual option, the one that you hinted at, which is rolling out of the throttle early, kind of coasting into the brake zone and saving fuel that way. You can also put the clutch in and lower the revs of the engine. That would also help save some fuel. But these cars also do have different engine maps, which affects the air-fuel mixture in the engine itself. That's all controlled electronically, and so you can dial back some of the fuel usage there. It's going to cost you in terms of speed, as we're seeing right here, but it will give you a bit more economy. But here comes Staffen. If Michaels has anything left, he's going to have to dial it back in if he wants to hold on to that second spot.
It's got to be close. He's been getting more and more aggressive with the fuel saving this entire lap, lifting off, short shifting early. Behind them, there's Chris Walsh and Sam Parmet having a great battle for position. Sam Michaels is out front by 6 seconds. The battles are for behind him. Chris Walsh side by side with Parmet now as they sweep through the right-handers. They both got fuel in their Porsches. Walsh goes around the outside. He'll take that position. Meanwhile, Michaels is trying to hang on with the little bit of fuel that he's got left in the tank.
Yeah, it looks like he's back on the pace a little bit, and you can hear it better than I can, Kyle, but it does seem like he's got, or at least he's going to use it even if he doesn't have it. We'll find out if he's got it. Wide there for the second lap in a row, but can Staffen take advantage? This is the drag race to the checkered.
Sam Michaels comes across the line. He will win the pro race in the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League. Across the line, Josh Staffen comes home in second. Michaels runs out of fuel. Walsh and Parmet actually swap positions, so Parmet comes home in fourth. Then Chris Walsh. Zachary Coonan, remember, he had an issue earlier, dropping all the way back to 10th. He climbs to 6th in the closing moments. He will finish there. Then Lucio Franco in the number 22, Jeff Corral, Bill Clark, and Dean I'm not even going to try it.
Benveniste.
There we go. That's what I was looking for,
going
Ryan.
with that.
The true professional in both of us. The 961 will come home in 10th in that Ferrari 488 GT3. So a great scrap at the front. And I think Sam Michaels ran out of fuel too.
Yep. He got it a little bit closer in terms of calculating how much he would need, but because he had enough to make it across the line and clinch that win. But yeah, both of our Mercedes runners at the front cutting it pretty darn close.
Well, there is a look at your race results. Sam Michaels, Josh Staff, and Scott Michaels. After all that chaos, it's Sam that comes out on top. Of course, it was Scott Michaels with the CrowdStrike Fastest Lap Award, a Every Second Counts Fastest Lap Award with a 1:54.828, brings it home as the fastest driver on track. But I think he would have caught Sam and passed Sam had he not run out of fuel. So that is an unfortunate circumstance that he'll have to get corrected for our second round on January 14th.
Yep, they'll go back to the drawing board, that's for sure. It is just race one, and we'll have 4 more races yet to come, which is very exciting, of course. But really, you can't ask for much more as far as entertainment from an esports event. That was awesome. 3, 4, 5 cars battling it out at the front for basically the whole race. You had the uncertainty of the fuel mileage thrown into the mix as well. Man, that was good stuff, Kyle. I hope our AM race can live up to it.
Truly spectacular stuff. We're not done yet. Don't go anywhere for the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League. We have our AM race starting in just a few minutes. Stay with us. We'll be right back here on CrowdStrike Racing.
Hello, I'm CJ Moses, the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for Amazon Web Services. Coming on as title sponsor with the SRO has allowed us to create new innovation, to use our technologies in ways they've never been used before. The cloud is very capable. All of these 195 services that we offer provide vast different capabilities, but customers come up with even better ways to use it than we ever thought of. In the case of the SRO, we're going to be bringing better experiences through to the TV itself. Second screen experiences where we're going to be doing a lot of predictive analytics and things like that. These are the types of things that we want to see our customers from AWS actually do. And by partnering with the SRO, we're introducing it to a whole new venue and to sports cars. We're bringing a lot of excitement to it as well. And when you have excited fans that are getting a better experience and we're able to showcase the technology that AWS has doing that, I think it's a win-win for SRO, for us, and for the fans that are actually engaged in the watching of the event.
Welcome back live to the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League. This is our AM race about to get ready and rolling. My name is Kyle Heyer, joined by Ryan Marine for our second and final race of the evening. We're now joined by Kevin Bohm, a senior engineer at Honda R&D, and Kevin races the number 9 HPD Civic Si in the TC Series in the TCA category in SRO America. Kevin, welcome to CrowdStrike Racing. We saw an amazing race for the first half of our night, but we're about ready to roll with our AM race. Welcome, first of all. It's good to have you back.
Thanks, Kyle. It's great to be here, and it's really awesome to watch these virtual races tonight.
So, Kevin, explain how your transition to virtual racing went when the pandemic forced us to go online. I know you were a participant in GT Rivals earlier this year, so tell us about how your year went, kind of expecting to have a full season of racing and then having it all sidelined for virtual racing.
Well, I mean, yeah, we started out the season at Circuit of Americas, and everything felt somewhat normal until we left and went to St. Pete, and then that event was kind of abruptly canceled, and we didn't really know if we were going to get a full season of real racing at that point, but SRO kind of put together a very competitive series here in the ACC format, and I was able to participate, and instead of trying to learn and push my Honda Civic SI to the limit, I had to learn to drive a virtual AMG Mercedes, which, as you can imagine, is quite a bit different, but it was a fun challenge, and we had a lot of really good battles at some fun tracks.
So, Kevin, we're kind of in a holding pattern here for our second race of the evening. Explain the ladder system for people who kind of want to get their foot in the door to become a race car driver. There's a lot of different ways to get your foot into racing, but what was the ladder that you kind of ended up on, and how does that kind of propel you from kind of amateur racing all the way up to the pro level?
Well, you know, I've been racing for a really long time, and I got my start in the Sports Car Club of America, and I've been racing there for probably 5 or 6 years now, and kind of built my own car and was somewhat successful, and was looking for a new challenge, and really found that Honda Performance Development, they had built a car that was not only eligible for racing in the Sports Car Club of America, but was also eligible to race in the SRO TC America series, and I was fortunate enough to kind of put together a program that we could race a full season with TC America this year, and that car is kind of a really neat car because it bridges the gap between amateur and professional racing, and the HPD kind of program, they have kind of, once you make that step, there's additional cars that you can kind of step up to and take the next step. So they also offer a TC Type R Honda that's a little bit faster, a little bit more power, a little bit more modified, and then they have the TCR Honda Type R, which is basically a flat-out race car with almost no standard parts left on it. And of course, we're going to see the Acura NSX or Honda NSX in Europe racing tonight. I'm not sure if anyone actually picked it to drive, but it's eligible here even in the GT3 racing.
So you kind of mentioned the TCA car and how it's a little bit different from other race cars, and that it's very close to stock. How much work do you do on that car personally? I know you've got a pretty awesome team behind you, but do you wrench on it yourself?
Oh yeah, I mean, I basically do everything on my own, and I was, like you said, I was very fortunate to have a really cool, really hard-working group of crew this year. It was made up of kind of my wife and my dad, and we had a couple of volunteers from Operation Motorsport, and we were able to kind of put together a fun team atmosphere and get a lot of work done. And fortunately, because that car is mostly stock, it doesn't take a lot of very extensive work, but we are still pushing it to the limit. So there's a lot of detail work that we do to make sure that we're getting everything we can out of the car. And yeah, it was a really cool experience to kind of bring that small group together and put together some good results and win some races, and then kind of end up with a championship at the end.
Yeah, you just kind of tack the championship on it as if that wasn't a big deal. You won the drivers and the team championships, plus the Rookie of the Year, so you've pretty much won everything there was to win. What's that like, just kind of showing up in a series and having a team behind you and winning races, and then walking home with a championship? And you got to do that at Indianapolis, of all places. So what's that experience like after, maybe coming up younger and kind of getting into an engineering career, maybe wishing you could be a race car driver, and then getting to do it and winning a championship? That's got to be so surreal.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically hitting the nail on the head. I mean, it's getting to do this year, kind of all the work that it took to even get the opportunity to compete this year was, it's hard to even summarize that in any concise way, but to be able to go out there and eventually be competitive and fight for podiums, that was a goal of mine. And then of course I wanted to fight for some wins. And kind of on the second half of the season, we were able to start putting together some really, really competitive results, and we had a pretty good winning streak. And really, it was one of those things where I had to keep kind of pinching myself because it didn't feel real. But it really was just 10 to 15 years worth of experience all finally coming together. And yeah, I mean, it's even looking back now, it's still it's hard to believe that we were able to pull that off.
It's super surreal, and it's been a pleasure talking with you all season long. As we get into our AM race here, we had to do a little bit of a server reset, just like 2020. Things didn't go quite right here tonight in the servers, but Kevin, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for joining us here this evening, and enjoy the racing from the sidelines. We did see one of those Acuras earlier in the race actually finish second, so Honda performance is strong at all levels of racing. So thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, Kyle.
So,
Well, Kyle, I'd just like to jump in and put a bow on what Kevin was talking about. He kind of undersold the end of the season that he said. He said it was a pretty good win streak. He won his first race in SRO competition at Road America and proceeded to win 6 out of the last 8 races of the year in order to clinch that championship in TC. So I'd say he was better than a pretty good streak. He had something special going. It was really fun to see him really come on strong in the second half of the year. It's a small family operation, as he hinted at, but you could always see him in the family around. His wife Sharon was always a big part of things as well, and it was a cool story, and certainly a ton of success, well deserved. And a guy with a lot of experience too, because he's an engineer, I think that came up earlier, for Honda Research and Development, and was a test driver for this NSX, driving it all over the world, so has a lot of real-world seat time. I know I've talked to him at the SCCA runoffs in the past, and just great to see him take that next step into pro racing and have the kind of year that he did, especially in the second half.
Yeah, so Kevin, I worked with him all season long on the CrowdStrike Racing live streams, and he's such a cool guy to chat with, and super humble as well. You mentioned how he understated it. Yeah, 6 out of 8 races won in the last part of the season. That'll do it generally in most championship formats. So really cool, awesome end of the year for him. So with the server reset, we're actually going to get a chance to watch qualifying here, which we would not have gotten the other way around. So we'll get a chance to look down the grid here just a little bit. And get qualifying underway. They'll have 15 minutes to qualify and then 25 minutes to race. Ryan, your thoughts on qualifying? This is the group that wanted a little bit more of a casual racing experience tonight, so I think we'll see some people really have a good time just lapping and getting familiar with their car, the platform they're racing, and the racetrack they're on.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, maybe this is good for this group that they get a little bit of extra track time, get some more experience. We suspect that this group is going to be less experienced with sim racing. Probably doesn't have any real racing experience either, which is great. That's one of the things that sim racing has brought to the motorsports world. If you wanted to be a football player, right, you could go outside, play catch with your buddy. You could go play pickup basketball if you want to be a basketball player. If you want to experience what it's like to do that sport. For motorsports, this is the best way to experience, especially a high-performance car like this one, like these ones, I should say, that we have in Assetto Corsa Competizione. I mean, you can go to your indoor karting track, and that's another great way to experience motorsports, but that's all done on a slightly different scale. And with as realistic as these are, and with so many good home simulator parts and pieces that you can get to set up your own rig, it comes awfully close to getting to experience the real thing.
For sure. There are a couple drivers out here that do have some real-world racing experience, one of them being CJ Moses. We talked with him earlier, and he is actually running the Evo variant of the Mercedes-AMG GT3, and it's a little bit difficult to tell by first glance, Ryan, but a bit of a wider mouth on the front of this thing tells me that it's the newer variant, and CJ out there running it right now and getting ready for his qualifying effort.
That's right. So to bring the unindoctrinated into the world of GT racing, I mentioned earlier GT3 being effectively the name of a set of rules that all of these cars are built to. When you do that, you submit your final product for what's called homologation, which basically means once the car is homologated, the folks from the sanctioning body, the technical chiefs, they'll take a look at the car, they'll take note of all the different specs of the car, and then once the homologation is complete, that cannot be changed. So by and large, these cars are not under any kind of development. There are some things you can do to tweak the setup on a given weekend to get the car to handle the way that you want it to as a driver, but you can't make wholesale changes to the way the car is constructed. After a number of years, however, you are allowed to either build a new car and then put that up for homologation, or create an evolution package, or an Evo as we call it. And this Mercedes-AMG, the original variant of it, was remarkably successful, but only recently did Mercedes and AMG put out an Evo for this particular car. It actually debuted this past year, and since it's an Evo of the same basic platform, there's not a lot of major changes as far as things that you can see. Like you mentioned, the grille probably is the main part of this car that you can tell visually the difference between the two. The main difference is in the driver comfort kind of features that you have in the car, the traction control, the ABS, some things within the cockpit that make the experience that much better for the driver. That's where they took the biggest step forward. By all accounts, the previous generation was really good. It might be one of the best to drive. I think Kyle's pointing out the differences here. So there weren't a whole lot of changes they needed to make. In fact, Mercedes held off to make the Evo for a surprisingly long amount of time. But yeah, there you see it, the difference there on the grille, much wider there on the Evo package. But in general, this is heralded as one of the most successful GT3 cars for the success it's had on track, but also the ease to drive, the comfort to drive that it offers. And there's a reason it's been so popular all around the globe.
And probably fairly similar to get adjusted to. We're actually switching between them inside the car, looking at the 74 right now, which is the Evo variant, and then back over to the 4 car, which is the older variant. Not a whole lot different in here. So for the driver, it's sort of business as usual, other than the things you mentioned, the improvements to the TC and ABS and all those things that will make the driving experience a little bit better. So cool to see both of those represented here in Assetto Corsa Competizione. Adam Youngblood in the number 98 is in the Porsche 911 GT3R. Right now, the quickest driver on track with a 2:04.206, the only one to have laid down a time thus far. And we've got about 12 drivers in here that are going to lay down some times and give it a go here.
This livery on the car, the paint scheme here, the Rover Racing, this is the car, this is the team that won the Total 24 Hours of Spa this year, which is the most prestigious GT3 race in the world. It is what it sounds like, 24 hours of racing nonstop through the night, through the rain, more often than not, because it's at the legendary Spa-Francorchamps circuit in Belgium in the Ardennes Forest, which is famous for seemingly not being able to go about 30 minutes without it raining at one point or another, especially if there's a race happening on that particular day. I can speak with some authority on the subject because it rained very hard on me. It was diluvian, you might say, when I was there in 2019 in similar circumstances this year. But yeah, pretty remarkable for this team, actually, that you see represented by this paint scheme. They won not just that race, but they actually won the 24-hour race held here at the Nurburgring. But they did that with BMW machinery, which is quite something. The same team winning 2 prestigious 24-hour races with 2 different manufacturers. You really don't see that, certainly not in the modern era, and we've kind of crunched some numbers trying to find another example of it, and we've gone back quite a way and have not been able to do it. So there's a little bit of trivia that probably nobody wanted, but I'm here to offer anyway.
Well, a wealth of knowledge in the notebook of Ryan Marine. Ryan, thanks for sharing that. Well, if you just joined us here on CrowdStrike Racing, we are racing the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League, the first round of several. The next round will be on January 14th at Circuit de Catalunya, Barcelona. So that'll be about a month from now. And again, we raced our pro race earlier, which is drivers that wanted sort of a really intense, high level of competition, and we're about ready to go racing for our AM race, which is drivers looking for a bit more of a casual gameplay experience here in Assetto Corsa Competizione. Again, all kind of friends and family of the CrowdStrike AWS group. So glad to have them with us. We've got some pro drivers in here as well as some drivers from Champion Motorsports, which is sort of the league and organization that helps put on these events, as well as the SRO esports events that we see on GT World. So glad to have them with us. There's Adam Youngblood, who's gotten bumped down to third as Moses and Peterson go to the top of the board. Peterson in this McLaren 720S, which is my personal favorite GT3 car, Ryan. So sleek, and it sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's a fantastic car. It shoots flames quite frequently as well, which Kyle also likes, and I'll admit it, I do too. Quickly, did want to mention the fact that we have the Pro race and the Am race. That's very much in keeping with sports car racing. Oftentimes, the two different classes will run simultaneously, as they did at the Total 24 Hours of Spa this year. And speaking of which, CrowdStrike Racing was represented at this year's 24 Hours of Spa. George Kurtz, of course, racing there in CrowdStrike colors. Finished 6th in the Pro-Am class in a very competitive field. So all of this all ties back in together, and it makes it all the more fun for us to be together here, celebrating motorsports, celebrating the partnership with SRO and AWS and CrowdStrike. And George Kurtz very much at the forefront of that, of course, and has been for quite some time, putting together a remarkable run in sports car racing here as of late.
And the Spa 24 is one of those great sports car races in the world. You can think of several: the Daytona 24, the Sebring 12, the Le Mans 24, and the Spa 24 all really shoot to the top. The 24 Hours of the Nürburgring, that's a whole other crazy race, and that takes place at the venue really here, and the Nordschleife, which sits next door. So there are endurance racing and GT racing are sort of one and the same, and CrowdStrike, again, participating in the sprint format in GT World Challenge America, and also making that foray into the endurance format in Spa-Francorchamps this year. So that was really cool to see, especially after working with that team all season long. That was really neat. So qualifying, 5.5 minutes to go here, and about 7 of our drivers have laid down times that will count. You'll see the 314 Ferrari making his way around the course, and straying a little bit offline there. We mentioned the marbles earlier. The farther off you stray from the lines everyone else runs, the more chance you get of kind of running in the bits of rubber and debris that accumulate on the sides of the racetrack, and it's not typically the fast way to go around, so good to stay off that stuff when you can.
That's right. They are well named because, like you talked about earlier, if you drive on those things, they're called marbles for a reason. It's like you're walking on marbles, and think about how insecure that would make you feel just walking around on your own 2 feet. Well, you can amplify that a little bit when you're carrying the kind of speeds that these cars are carrying. That's true here in the virtual world. It's true as well in real world racing. And it's one of the great things that this particular simulation does a marvelous job of simulating.
A marvelous job.
That experience. Yes, that's right. Of getting on those marbles. Not an experience that you would enjoy, much like my puns that I'm making by accident.
So drivers continue to work their way around. Looks like we've got Jason from our Operation Motorsport here tonight as well, running in 3rd place. To actually make that 4th as positions shuffle just a little bit. Actually jumps up into 2nd place with a 201.338 across the line. Of course, Operation Motorsport, we've talked at length about them in the past, and I'm sure we'll have Jason on again to talk a little bit more about it in the future, but they worked very closely with Kevin Bohm this season. So that's a story for, I think, another day at length, and maybe we'll bring Kevin back in to talk with Jason about that. But cool to have Jason here tonight. As the rest of the field, I think we're only missing, I think Nate Vincent is here but not going to race. So 11 drivers now putting times in for this race.
I think Nate ended up running in the pro race as well. I believe I saw him on the results. I could have been wrong with that, but that's what my brain is telling me. So take that for what it's worth. Here's a good look at Case Beams. Side swipe, the team name. That's a cool livery on that Aston Martin. Absolutely beautiful race car. I'm partial to the V12 variant myself. I think this is the V8.
I believe that's correct. It also comes in GT4 form as well.
That's right.
And that is a car that you see quite often in GT World, or I should say Pirelli GT4 America. And I actually, my buddy Kenton Cook drives one of those things, and I'm really jealous of him a lot. So I wish I could get a hand at one of those things, Ryan, but I think a Corolla will have to do for now.
Yes, well, all in good time, Kyle. But you never know. Don't say no. You got friends in the right places to at least make these things a possibility down the line. And that is that McLaren a little bit further back, showing some pace as well. Very similar paint schemes. I wonder if these two are somehow working together, or if that's just a coincidence.
Could be. It's Jordan Peterson in the 720. I don't think they're on the same team, just similarly painted vehicles, and Peterson will go around the long way into this left-hander that's got a lot of runoff, but that's not really legal racetrack. You can't run out there over and over and over again. The game will actually kind of make you keep it between the white lines, which, again, the white lines denote the edge of the race course. And oftentimes you get a little bit of leeway beyond the red and white curbing, but you don't get to run out there all the time. So drivers will have to be conscious of the track limits around here to stay within the boundaries.
Track limits is a big part of racing at some of these circuits that have undergone a lot of changes in the last 15 years, 20 years or so, due to a move to try and make the tracks as safe as possible. That has led to pushing some of the barriers back a little bit further, paving parts of the track that might have been grass otherwise or sand traps to give cars more of an opportunity to slow down. This turn 1 area you're looking at right here, all that runoff room that Kyle is going to helpfully circle or square for us. That's kind of what I'm talking about here. But what that does then is create effectively usable track surface that most drivers are going to want to use. That's kind of the racing line. You want to make that arc as wide as possible to carry as much speed on that particular line as you can. And there is going to be a temptation to get out there and use some of that paved area, but depending on the various racetracks, some of the painting can be used to delineate this, what is and is not acceptable for use, and that has led to this track limits discussion that we're having now. There are parts of the track basically that are paved, but you cannot use them, and the drivers are going to be battling with that because getting as close to it as possible without going over typically will yield the fastest lap times, but that not going over bit can be a little bit challenging.
Now, the drivers will argue that if it's paved, it's fair game. The
That's
stewards
what
will tell
Mario
you.
Andretti says, and I am keen to listen to anything Mario has to say, but you're right, the stewards, Mario is not a steward, so they've got a different take on the matter.
Yeah, well, I think the idea is to create a safety margin, and when you start driving on the safety margin, it no longer becomes that margin that you need for safety. So
Right.
there's a reasoning for being between the white lines, but drivers are always looking for that extra little bit of racetrack to use to find speed, and if it's not a barrier, I guess the drivers will take it all the way to the edge. They'll take it to where the walls are, which is often a long ways away from where the track surface is. It's always fun to watch drivers discuss track limits every time we go to a racetrack with lots of paved runoff. So Jordan Peterson, we're watching in the number 720 McLaren, will come out of the final corner here and across the line. Qualifying is complete, and barring any incredible laps here, it looks like CJ Moses will be on pole in the number 74.
Great lap from CJ to get under 2 minutes. That's a really good lap time if you can get there. Certainly in qualifying trim, we saw that. I mean, that compares pretty favorably to the times we saw in the pro race not so long ago, where the pole speed was just a little bit under a minute 55. So CJ, as you would expect, given his racing experience, he's been club racing for a long time. He's been pro racing now the last handful of seasons. Has some plans that he's not quite ready to announce yet, but I can say are fairly exciting on the pro racing side for this upcoming season. And looking forward to... Oh, by the way, we're being told this is not CJ actually driving the car. It's somebody with CJ's name. Apparently it's Darren Treacle. So everything I was going to say about CJ, you can scrap it because it's not actually CJ.
I thought that was a possibility because I remember that we did a test race a couple weeks ago, and I think this was a scenario. Wasn't sure if that had changed, but obviously that it has not. So that's Darren Treacle in the number 74 car. I'm familiar with Darren from a couple different disciplines of sim racing. And while we wait, we got a couple minutes before our race will actually begin. So if you'd like to talk about this race on social media and engage the community, you can use the hashtag CrowdStrike Cup on social media, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Make sure that you check them out, as well as CrowdStrike Racing and CrowdStrike and AWS. Make sure to tag everybody and keep the conversation going after this race. It's going to be a bit of downtime. We don't race again until January 14th at Barcelona, the virtual representation of Barcelona. So keep everybody in the loop with what you enjoyed about tonight on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram with hashtag CrowdStrike Cup. So really looking forward to getting this one underway finally. Kind of had a bit of a delay here, Ryan, but now gridding up. And we've got a couple minutes before we go green. Of course, Darren Treacle on that front row. Jason Leach in the number 9 will start alongside. Then Peterson and Orashan in the number 78 will start in that second row. And then the run down to turn 1, we get to do it all over again, and it went pretty smoothly in the pro race, and then all went wrong at the exit of turn 3. So your predictions for the M race here?
Oh, boy, put me on the spot. Well, I think with the car count that we have in this one, that increases our chances of getting through the first couple of laps clean. I think it's going to happen. I think that our AM competitors are going to show us how this is done, and hopefully we can replicate that when we get to Barcelona next month for the second round of the championship. What do you think?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to watch for sure, Ryan. And just one thing I wanted to remind everybody is that this is a friends and family operation here tonight. So Darren is actually a very good friend of CJ Moses, and that's how he ended up getting in the rig. I was going to say that not a whole lot of people should have access to CJ Moses' account with AWS and CrowdStrike securing everybody, making sure we're all on lockdown. So CJ not going to be – he was here with us earlier. We chatted with him a bit earlier in the night so he could head back towards the beginning of the event to hear CJ and Kevin Bohm, as well as Adam Chugg, talk about AWS, CrowdStrike, and racing in general. So as we wait for the pacing to begin, Ryan, we head to the Nurburgring, and then we go to Barcelona, and you touched on that. That's our second round. That's a similar racetrack to the Nürburgring in a lot of ways. It's high speed, sweeping, and about the same length, if I recall correctly. But I'm looking forward to going there. That's a beautiful area of Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. That's on my bucket list. I'd love to get to Barcelona. Nearly had a chance to get there for an SRO GT World Challenge Europe race a couple of years ago. Just didn't quite work out. But, yeah, definitely on the bucket list. Another track with some F1 pedigree as well, and should definitely be a challenge for everyone. But the fun kind of challenge, the kind that we relish when we're talking about motorsports.
Well, we had a really good race in the pro event earlier tonight. 3 drivers all battling for the top spot. You could throw a 4th and 5th there in the last couple minutes. I'm excited to get this underway. I think we probably could have predicted the battle up front was going to be pretty exciting. I don't know what to predict for this in terms of the racing. I think it's going to be close and entertaining, and we might be even more surprised than the pro race. I think we saw a great scrap there and an unexpected finish with one of the drivers we expected to win having a pretty major mistake about 3/4 of the way through the race. So you never know what's going to happen here in Assetto Corsa Competizione in the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League. And it's all going to start, again, look at the manufacturer diversity. There's only, if I'm looking correctly, Ryan, we have 2 Porsches, 2 Mercedes, and we have 2 McLarens, and every other car is unique. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different manufacturers represented in an 11-car race. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's what we want to see, all the different varieties out there. I talked about the balance of performance earlier. So effectively, all of the cars are capable of essentially the same lap time. Certain tracks are going to suit certain cars just a little bit better, but that BOP is one of the reasons we do see such variety. Love seeing the Nissan. I like old Godzilla when it can make it to the racetrack. Unfortunately, we don't see a whole lot of those in the real world, but as you can see, that car right there has some great history and success racing all over the world, primarily now in Japan. Really don't see it anywhere else, but we've had Nissans in the SRO America paddock in the past, back in the Pro League World Challenge days. Love seeing the Jaguar on the grid as well. You got your McLaren that you were all excited about, a couple of them. So it's a great bit of variety. Interesting to see the Jag is going to be starting from the pit lane. That's maybe not a bad strategy, actually, because it could help you avoid the carnage at the beginning. So we'll see how that one plays out.
I want to go back to the Nissan for a moment. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know that the Lamborghini Huracan has a rear-wheel drive variant from the factory, but aren't all Nissan GTRs from the factory all-wheel drive? So this is a kind of a unique car in that form, that it's not a car. It's a rear-wheel drive version in GT3, but I don't think that's something you can buy.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. The other example of things that needed to be changed to fit the regulations, the reason that is, by the way, is that rear-wheel drive is the only accepted configuration as far as the drive wheels for GT3. So you can't have front-wheel drive, you can't have all-wheel drive. The other car that has a change like that comes to mind is the NSX, which of course is a hybrid in its road-going variant, but obviously is not, I say obviously, maybe that's not obvious, but it is not for its GT3 variant because there is no place at the moment in the regulations for hybrids, although I suspect that that could be changing. We do have a new set of GT3 regs set to come online, I believe, in 2022. That would not incorporate hybrids, although I do think that was discussed. So I think we would be looking somewhere around 2026 for something like that, perhaps to creep into the rules. But that adds an element of complexity, without a doubt, that is not there with a purely internal combustion engine configuration.
Yeah, of course, I think that sort of steps outside the scope of what GT racing is right now. Of course, hybrid racing is already a reality at some level with the Le Mans prototypes and other race cars of the type. Of course, Formula E sort of trailblazing an all-electric series, but in GT World Challenge, all about the internal combustion stuff for now, and some changes required to make those cars fit the rule sets. The race has not yet begun. It'll be a 25-minute sprint with Darren Treacle out front. Again, every time you see CJ Moses pop up, it will be Darren Treacle behind the wheel of this very colorfully liveried number 74 Mercedes-AMG GT3 Evo. So Jordan Peterson on the outside of the front row in that McLaren 720S with the kind of pink triangles on it. It's a great looking car. Then Dave Orishon, Adam Youngblood, that second row. Adam Chug, Case Beams, that third row. Then Jason Barnes, Webo Chen in row 4. And climbing up the hill for the final time under pacing conditions here, Ryan, about ready to let him loose.
Well, excited to see how this one goes. We had a pretty clean start in the pro race. Let's see what the AM guys can do. 25 minutes on the clock, coming around to start the first race of the season.
For the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League, our AM race for round number 1 is about to go green. Darren Treacle and Jordan Peterson side by side. Green flag flies, and we're racing down towards turn number 1. Already behind him, Adam Chug in the number 1. He's middle 3 wide. Between, I believe that's Youngblood and Beams on either side into the first corner. Oh, they make contact across the racetrack. The 314 of Barnes gets together. They gather it up and carry on after an excursion through the gravel trap. There's a car sideways. That's Peterson in the 720 from second.
Oh man, had a great qualifying effort, but it all goes wrong in turn 1. Well, doesn't make me look very smart, does it, when I predicted a clean start? That's great news, though, for Treacle, who is out in front and able to get away with a nice clean start here, and now can just focus forward on putting in good lap times and trying to pull away for a coveted race win. Several cars, though, caught up in that skirmish in the first corner.
I'll tell you what, Adam Chug, for all the dramas that he had in the first corner, he's actually still running, I believe, in 4th or 5th place here when this all cycles out. He's in that number 1 CrowdStrike Porsche. Big slide for a moment. He's got, I believe, is that the 109 car of Case Beams behind him in the Aston Martin. Now he cycles up to 3rd place. So what a climb for him. I'm not sure if that's accurate. He'll let the timing and scoring cycle itself out. There's a few more cars between him and race leader Darren Treacle.
Yeah, a few things need to get cycled out there. You can see Barnes up at the top, but there's a P next to the very right of the screen, and that indicates what we're seeing right here, that Barnes is in the pit lane. Was involved in that collision first with Chug, and then I think also got caught up in that second altercation that we didn't get a great look at. We just saw the aftermath of, and at that point perhaps the damage was too significant to carry on. This is Youngblood running here in the 3rd spot, about 3 seconds behind what Treacle has put together. Running as CJ in the top spot there, so this is actually 2nd place on the road.
That will indeed cycle Adam Chug into 3rd place. So very quickly went from running outside the top 5 to almost in the Armco barrier to back up into 3rd. Behind him, there's Case Beams in the 109 car running a little bit wide, and up the inside comes Jason Leach in the number 9 McLaren.
Little birdie telling me that the name is pronounced Casey. It's a different spelling of the name, and I'm sure I screwed that one up earlier as well, so apologies to you, Casey, for that. Trying to hold off Leach here. And as you mentioned, the battle for 4th, just a little too late on the brakes that time, couldn't get it woed up, and that opened up the door to the inside. But now coming back, look at this, an aggressive move there in that left-hander.
Yeah, Casey Beams throwing it down the inside, going to climb up on the curbing, bailed out of that, turned in a bit too early, and would have been in the dirt for that one. So Casey lines the exit up, but it looks like Jason Leach will be able to pull away in that McLaren for the time being. was our closest battle on the racetrack. We'll see if it reforms here. Oh, big slide there, kind of holding adrift. And then Aston Martin, not typically how you see those cars make speed, but it's spectacular to watch.
It is. You can see them, see the rear tires leaving down some tracks. You can see the front tires in total opposite lock. That means pointed the opposite way the car is turning. That's a great piece of car control there from Beams to keep that 109 pointed in the right direction. Did lose some time through that, though, trying to run down Leach and that McLaren just up ahead.
So out up front, it's Darren Treacle leading the way. And, of course, Darren is actually quite experienced in racing sims. I know he's got experience in iRacing, another popular consumer racing simulator, but not quite as catered to the GT World Challenge experience as Assetto Corsa Competizione, but he right now leads by about 4 seconds over Adam Youngblood in that Porsche. We mentioned rear-engined GT3 Porsches earlier. This is about as opposite as ideas can get in the GT3 rules form, with the Mercedes having that engine kind of long and extended out the front of the car, and the Porsche being rear-mounted and kind of hanging out over that rear axle.
Yeah, totally different philosophies, and it's amazing, but more often than not, these two manufacturers are at the very pointy end, typically joined by Audi. Lamborghini really has come on strong in recent years, and then you will see the others jump up there as well, but there is such strength in numbers from Mercedes, Porsche, and Audi in particular. Lamborghini, as I mentioned, also kind of thrown up into that mix, and Ferrari you can't discount either, although they don't tend to be there with the same volume as some of the German manufacturers are. But like you said, there's a big difference in terms of where the engine is placed. One similarity, though, is they both are naturally aspirated. It's a flat 6 engine configuration in the Porsche versus the V8 in the Mercedes. But some of the other cars in the field will be turbocharged. You'll have smaller displacement engines with big turbos, bigger engines with smaller turbos. There's a lot of different ways to make speed, and they're pretty much all reflected in the GT3 paddocks.
Adam Chug feeling some pressure from Jason Leach behind him in the number 9 McLaren. And hearing that Casey Beams is on a controller, which is actually an amazing thing to hear, because driving a race car with a controller is not an easy sight. Look at Leach up the inside, big dive, and then a slide to the inside. Chug will go the long way around, ride the rim, and hang on to third. What a move that was for Leach. It didn't quite work out. But going back to Casey Beams, it is a challenge to drive a race car competitively in a racing sim with the controller. I'd say Casey's doing a pretty amazing job with what they've got.
If it is true that that is what she's doing, I am incredibly impressed to have this kind of pace with a controller. There's a lot of different settings that you can dial in to ACC to try and help with that, but even still, I think there's no replacement for the real thing, especially a good force feedback wheel. Compare that, by the way, driving with an Xbox controller to what Treacle is doing on CJ Moses' sim rig at home, which he told us earlier was complete with the whole full motion seat and everything. That is the full experience, and trying to go up against that with a controller, that's like bringing a knife to a gunfight.
Doing well so far. Casey is in 5th place right now. Moving back to Adam Chug and Jason Leach. This has been getting a bit rowdy between these two on the front straightaway. Porsche versus McLaren. A dive for Leach into the braking zone. A little bit of a boop into turn 1, just a slight touch. Leach turns down to the apex, kind of slams over the inside apex, and lines him up again to try to get back under him in turn number 2.
The boop is a technical racing term, in case you were wondering. Very technical, very serious.
I'm absorbing that from Tom O'Gorman. That's
Yes.
a word that he uses all the time.
Yeah, I've worked with Tom a few times on various broadcasts. That was not a boop. That was a bang. That was a hard contact there from Leach, Kyle.
That was a pretty big bump, I would say. That will probably leave a mark on the rear bumper of Adam Chug's Porsche. But it's all in fun and games.
That's right. Everybody continues on. So, and it was pretty square. If you're going to hit someone, that's kind of the way you want to do it. You're not going to turn them around if you hit them square like that. So, good for everybody.
And Leach has been super aggressive on the brakes. Closing in. Oh, big slide for Chug on the exit of the corner. Going to get the tires in the gravel and concede that position. Not voluntarily, but he'll have to fight back. Meanwhile, Casey Beams closing back in that pink and black Aston. Might have the pace to run down Chug at this rate. You see the damage to the rear bumper of that 001. That, of course, is courtesy of Leach.
Yeah, Yeah, that car's been through the wars a little bit. We're only 8 minutes into this race, and in case you're wondering, that will affect how the car drives in the sim. There's obviously an aerodynamic aspect of it. The car might pick up some drag. These cars are made to cut through the air as smoothly as they can, and if you get some damage and adjust the bodywork a little bit, it can affect that to your detriment. But also things like hitting kind of in the wheel well area can result in bent suspension, not just in the real world, but that's modeled here as well. You get, wow, another great drift there from Beams. That's impressive stuff, and especially, again, knowing what she's working with that controller. But anyways, the point being, if you're new to this, yes, indeed, that contact, the damage, it's not just visual. There is actually a feel to it that you will feel if the car has been knocked a little bit out of alignment, and that's something that, if that's happened to you, you're going to have to deal with the rest of the race.
And you mentioned the feeling that drivers can get, not only through the wheel, but also in, I know there's some sims that have force feedback pedals. I wouldn't be surprised if Darren Treacle's got those. But going back to the feel, I mean, controllers can simulate some of the vibrations that you might feel, but racing wheels, a lot of the ones that they're using, the drivers are using for this simulator, actually simulate anti-lock brakes. So whenever you have a braking application where the anti-lock brake system engages, you'd actually feel that vibration in the wheel. So there's a lot of different tactile sensations that you can get in Assetto Corsa Competizione as well. You saw Casey Beams go for a bit of a slide there on corner exit. But there's some feeling that you can gain in the steering that Casey Beams is not going to have with the controller, and that is definitely a disadvantage, but still overcoming it pretty well.
That's right. In my quest to put together a sim rig that is way more sophisticated than my modest talent would merit, I have recently made a major upgrade to a direct drive wheel, and let me tell you, it is amazing the information that gives you. Now, if you've driven a real race car before, even at a low level, you're kind of used to certain sensations that you get through the seat, effectively, to tell you what the car is doing, what the handling is doing, and you just don't have that unless you have the full motion sim rig in real life, as CJ Moses does, which Treacle is using to great effect right now up at the front of this field. But the more sophisticated wheels do a great job of simulating some of that, and also giving you the same feeling you would get through the steering column that you do in the real world, and you just can't replicate that on a controller. There's no way.
There's one big reason I love working with Assetto Corsa Competizione, and this is a detail that people might not notice unless I point it out. Keep an eye on this windshield wiper here. As we go through this next section of corners, you're going to see this wiper actually move slightly from left to right as the G-forces act on it in the simulator. That is such a cool detail, and really goes to show you the level of immersion that Assetto Corsa Competizione can afford you. There's a car a little bit wide, but watch the wiper. Now back to the left as the G-forces swing it back over. Such a neat little thing that is such a minor detail, Ryan, but really makes you feel like you're in it.
Yeah, the guys at Kunos, guys and gals at Kunos, the developers behind this simulation, didn't have to put that in. No one would have thought anything of it, but the fact that they did just gives you an idea of the amount of detail that goes into trying to create the most realistic GT3 simulation experience you can find. And it goes beyond that, of course, but if they're going to spend the time in modeling the windshield wiper shaking in the air as you accelerate, moving left and right with the car in yaw, that tells you how much focus they're going to put on things like simulating the braking forces and the way that the traction control kicks in, all the things that make for a realistic experience.
And even just the tire and road interaction. Simulating rubber is an extraordinarily challenging problem that has plagued game designers for decades. It's really more of a chemical problem than it is anything else. There's a lot of science that goes into not only making real tires in the real world, but simulating their behavior and how, the glass transition temperature and all these technical terms of how rubber heats up and expands and interacts. I don't envy those that have to make a simulation really feel real, because there's a lot of work involved.
We are at the halfway mark, still a long way to go.
CJ Moses, or I should say Darren Treacle, leads this race by 13.2 seconds. Jason Leach runs third. We touched on Operation Motorsport a little while ago. Operation Motorsports actually runs their own sim racing league in order to engage and excite veteran beneficiaries when they can't be in the paddock. I believe that they use the iRacing platform for that. And that's a really cool initiative that they've got rolling over there. And I think I'm going to get some more information on that for the future so that people can tune in with that as well. But Jason, again, been with Operation Motorsport this season. We actually got to talk to him in person at Indianapolis Motor Speedway earlier this year. So if you head back on this channel, the CrowdStrike Racing YouTube channel, and you find the Indianapolis 8-hour live stream, you can go through there and find the interview that we did with Jason out there. Some really cool information as well. So carrying on with, actually looks like Youngblood closed in slightly. It's 11.8 seconds now between Youngblood and Darren Treacle out front. We're halfway through this, Ryan, 11 and a half minutes to go. And it's Treacle, Youngblood, Leach, Chug, and Beams the top 5. And Jordan Peterson is recovering from that early issue in turn 1. Runs 6th right now, trying to track down Casey Beams, who's a little ways up the road.
Might have done it because I don't see Casey up the road right now, so
yes.
Not sure what happened there. Looks like there was a swap of position from Peterson, who's doing a nice job to recover from that issue at the start, like you mentioned. Beams still putting on a drift show for us, which I appreciate.
I wanted to go back and see, sorry to interrupt you, Ryan. I wanted to see if there was an issue for Casey Beams. I went back 30 seconds to try to see if there was a replay of anything. This must have happened a little while ago because that looked all pretty neat and tidy. So a position swap earlier in the lap, probably towards the beginning of that lap, potentially in the stadium section, but now back live, back to 6th as Peterson is back in the top 5. And some damage on the nose of that car. You have to wonder, I don't see any damage on the rear of Beams' car, so I don't think those puzzle pieces fit together.
Does make you wonder, but you're right. I don't see anything askew on Casey's car either, so hopefully that puts to bed that mystery. Well, I guess it doesn't, but
well,
it puts to bed that thread of the mystery.
Yeah, I think that damage could have been from the lap 1, turn 1 incident. There's the flames out of the back of the McLaren. And as you mentioned earlier, I like flames because cars that shoot flames are better than cars that don't shoot flames, and you can't change my mind.
It is an objective fact, yes.
So Peterson with the fire-breathing dragon of a McLaren working through the stadium section now, a 2:04.317 last time by. Adam Youngblood had an issue last time out, 2:12.108. That let Jason Leach slide into 2nd place. Youngblood will have to fight his way back up to the number 9, who is running pretty competitive lap times right now.
Yeah, it looks that way. Leach is really settling into a... Oh, boy. Commentator's curse right there. Just about to say settling into a rhythm, but the door is now open. Let's see what Youngblood can do, making a move to the outside, but has the move made before getting into this S portion of the track that is so fast. You have to be so precise. Not a place you want to be side by side with anyone, and I think both of them wisely realized that and didn't see Leach put up too much of a fight and will live to fight another day. Now coming back on the attack pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something. Jason Leach has found some real pace, and if you subtract the mistake he just made down there at the far end of the racetrack, I think he might be a bit faster than Youngblood. Right back on the rear bumper into the chicane. Youngblood's in really deep. Leach is all sorts of sideways trying to gather it back up.
That was a bit of a moment there, and that's going to be a setback. This is a part of the track, if you're trying to set up a pass, you really need to be pretty perfect through, and Leach, I don't think, is going to be able to get close enough to make a move here into turn number 1. We'll see. Still 8 minutes left, so I speculate that's good for 4, maybe 5 more laps at the pace that our leader is running at the moment. So plenty of opportunities, and might be a case of just getting close enough to put some pressure on Youngblood and try and force an error. That might be the safest way by.
Right on board with Jason again. Left-right combination here. This McLaren very low to the ground. Porsche of Youngblood runs a touch wide. Gathers it back up. Jason runs out to track edge underneath the ACC gantry and into the left-hander. A lot of camber in these corners. The banking. The track angled to help the cars make it through the corner at a higher speed. Oh, Youngblood's hot again. Runs a little bit wide. And here comes Leach up alongside. Oh, he's off track
now. Leach is off too, and I think that might have been a maneuver. I think he was concerned that the Porsche was coming back across the track with that rejoin, maybe coming from the grass, it looked a bit unsettled, and so I think he was moving over just to make a little bit of extra space to make sure he didn't get caught up. But Youngblood did a great job to save that car and got it pointed straight, and Leach ended up off track and having a moment of his own. So now he's got some work to do to try and reel that Porsche back in. We know he's got the pace to catch it, but catching the car you're trying to pass is one thing, and finding a way by is another.
So before this spices back up again towards the front of the field, let's jump a little bit deeper and talk about some drivers we haven't mentioned a whole lot today. Kishan Patel in the number 4 Mercedes in the bright blue colors this evening, running in 8th right now. Right behind him is the 314 of Jason Barnes. I believe this is actually for position. Whoa, they're going to get real slidey and tight together at the exit of the final corner, and now a drag race down the front stretch.
Yeah, Kishan Patel, I think, wanted to go by Kiwi, the nickname that he chose in that Mercedes. Had a moment there getting off track, did Kiwi, but now presumably back on pace, although it actually doesn't look like it. I wonder if there is something a bit amiss there. Maybe got the fuel wrong like we saw in the first one. I love how our marshals are signaling for a slow car on track back there with the white flag.
Cool details here in ACC, a little bit wide for the number 4. Back across the racetrack. Is that our second place car? Yes, it is. That was Youngblood squeezing through. Jason Leach will follow. That was a bit dicey there for a moment.
And now what you want to see as you're running in a podium spot and have less than 6 minutes remaining, a car spearing directly across the track in front of you.
Casey Beams, big dive into turn 1 under Adam Chug. Overshot it slightly, and Chug will repass Beams on corner exit. And that will be worked back on the plate for the 109 to try to catch back up to the number 1.
This has been the highlight show, a one-driver highlight show, it seems like. Casey Beams has been making passes, doing some sliding, some drifting for us, and all on the controller. It's my star of the race as far as I'm concerned.
Putting on a show. That's for sure. Another big slide there on corner entry. A little bit of understeer there. Couldn't get the car rotated in, but trying to run down Adam Chug again. There's a car off in the dirt. I think that's the number 4 again. That's a lot more damage on the number 4. Let's see if we can get a look at what happened to Kishan. Kiwi going to run a little bit wide here, and maybe was there help from behind potentially from Jordan Peterson? Yep. Into the tire barrier for the number 4.
Yeah, that could be terminal damage. Even if it's not, that car certainly is not going to drive like it should. It looks like it's stuck. You can see the wheels spinning there. I never noticed how tall that grass looks before.
Did get unstuck.
I've never really looked at. Yeah, that's good.
Back in the gravel at corner exit. So 4-car back rolling. Let's jump up to second place. Jason Leach and Adam Youngblood still going at it. Youngblood has probably been a little bit faster earlier in the race, but last time by, Leach ran almost his best lap, about half a second off from his quickest of the event.
And was able to take that second spot, I think, on that lap as well. Remember, he was behind a little bit earlier and had been working to get by this Porsche, just couldn't quite get it done, and somewhere along the line was able to sneak past, but these two seem pretty evenly matched, and just one little slip-up might open the door for Youngblood to get back around.
Climb up on the curb for a moment for Jason Leach. Youngblood has been flirting with the edges of the racetrack on corner entry, which is always a concern as a driver, because if you get one of those rear tires off in the grass or the gravel on corner entry, and then you turn into the corner and you load up that side of the race car, Ryan, it is a scary experience to have the car step out. You can see it right there with the 98 on corner exit. If you have half the car on the pavement, half the car on the slippery stuff, it generally turns into a pretty tricky situation.
Yep, you got your hands full. Even the traction control, as good as it is on these GT3 cars, assuming they've got it dialed up, some drivers do prefer to turn it off, but I would not recommend that. Usually these cars are really designed to have that aid on, at least to some extent. All of that to say, yes, you put yourself in that position, and even the best traction control in the world is not going to save you. You've got to be pretty much perfect to try and wrangle the car back under control.
Well, you mentioned wanting traction control on. The reasoning is that many of these cars are well over 450 to 500 horsepower. Now, just for context, my very pedestrian Toyota Corolla makes 137. Or 134, something like that. So 5 times the power and all to the rear wheels. If you spin those rear wheels with too much right foot, the back end of the car will want to be in front of the front end of the car, and that typically is not the desired outcome. So the traction control basically moderates your right foot to keep it from spinning those tires and getting you into a bad spot, but it's really not meant to split between surfaces. It sort of assumes that the grip is equal on both sides, and that's not often the case.
Well, your Corolla still makes more horsepower than my Spec Miata race car does, so there's that.
Let's take him on a racetrack. We'll see how that works. I don't think my car will win.
You might be right there.
Got a chance to drive a Spec Miata at Road America, and wow, that car dynoed at 90 horsepower a couple weeks later.
Yep.
I did manage to spin it out at Gingerman Raceway without traction control, because there is no traction control.
What turn?
Leaving the pits. It was an embarrassing moment.
Nice.
In my defense, it was a cold, wet day, and I had bad tires.
I will give you all the credit in the world for readily admitting that in a public forum. I would not have been so brave.
It was a public forum when I spun out in front of many spectators. So
I was not one of them.
Yeah.
You didn't have to tell me that, but you did.
Yeah.
Look at this treacle out in front. He's got some lap traffic to deal with here, but this should be the final lap for this field, and it has been a comprehensive performance from Treacle in this Mercedes.
Treacle just got out front, drove away right from the drop of the green flag, avoided the mayhem behind him into turn number 1, and has since put together 12 very nice laps with only about a half a second of spread between them, which is remarkable consistency, and now only has a couple miles left. Meanwhile, behind him, it has not been super consistent, but it has been very entertaining. That's Jason Leach and Adam Youngblood. They've traded spots a handful of times. Youngblood's got some work to do to get back to Leach if he wants another attempt at a pass.
And there's Barnes, who had that terrible start, unfortunately. Had contact right in the first corner and spent some time in the pit lane, and so is now down a few laps, running in 8th, but is showing great pace, inserting himself into this mix. And you have to believe that Jason is someone who would have perhaps had a challenge for Treacle up at the front of the field had the start of the race gone just a little bit different, and the pace he's been able to display in a repaired race car here, unfortunately in something of a losing effort given the amount of time he lost earlier, and unfortunately I might have cursed him there just a little bit, but I have to say I've been impressed with the speed.
There's Dave Orishon in the number 78 Lamborghini Huracan, the lone Lamborghini in this field. We've actually been running pretty consistent lap times, but didn't get off to a great start, a couple laps down, and working his way on the front straightaway to take the white flag. And of course, the 54 car was also here. That vehicle being driven by, I have a nickname, I believe, for the Professor in the number 54 car. Did not believe it only took one lap before ending the race. So Darren Treacle out of the final corner across the line for the AM race for the first round of the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League is your race winner in the number 74 AMG Mercedes. Evo across the line wins the race. Jason Leach from Operation Motorsport a little ways back in the number 9. It has been quite the evening of passing and repassing and some mistakes here and there, Ryan, but coming out and looks like he'll grab second place.
Yeah, great job there. Interesting, representing 2C's Motorsports. That's a real-life team that ran this livery. Supposed to run in SRO Europe this year and ended up in British GT as well instead, which is an associated championship. But they had some big news today, announcing they're going to go DTM racing in the new look GT3 DTM next year.
Interesting. So Leach comes across the line. That will be second place for that number 9 McLaren. Third place, Adam Youngblood, will be the last step on the podium. And Jordan Peterson, after being turned around in the first corner and has some significant front-end damage with some contact with Kiwi in the number 4, will come home inside the top 5. That is a heck of a recovery, Ryan. I'll give him credit for that. And brings the McLaren, although battered and bruised, to a top 5 result.
That's a picture of perseverance, isn't it? Just looking at that car, you know that it has not gone your way when your car looks like that here at the end of a 25-minute race. But Jordan kept at it, got a decent finish with a 4th place run.
Adam Chug for a top 5 result. Some more battered and bruised body panels on this Porsche 911 GT3, but Chug comes across the line 5th place for the number 1 Porsche. Then KC Beams in the number 109, 6th place. Webo Chen in the number 18. That is that Nissan with a little bit of damage on the nose of it, but pretty quiet race for the Nissan. I would say that was a success in that regard. And in a moment, we'll have your race results up on screen for you, as well as your CrowdStrike Every Second Counts Fastest Lap Award in just a moment. Of course, Darren Treacle from flag to flag, leading the race and winning the event all in one. And here is a look at your race results. The CrowdStrike Every Second Counts Fastest Lap Award goes to Darren Treacle in that leading Mercedes-AMG GT3.
Racing as CJ Moses, who just texted me telling me I won. Actually, Darren won, but CJ's going to claim it. He has some stake in it for sure, using his rig there. That's why his name's on it. But yeah, great job, and to get the fastest lap as well as the race win, that's all the bragging rights you can ask for. Also, the pole, really hard to find any fault in the run from Darren here this evening.
We want to wish everyone a big thanks for joining us here tonight for our first round of the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League here on CrowdStrike Racing. Again, my name is Kyle Heyer with Ryan Marine. Thanks for joining us. Make sure that you don't miss out on the next event. You can join us on social media, #CrowdStrike Cup on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook to join the conversation. And thanks again to CrowdStrike and AWS for putting on a heck of a show with CrowdStrike friends and family. January 14th is our next event. It'll be at the virtual Barcelona Formula One racetrack, Circuit de Catalunya. That'll be again on the 14th of January. That is a Thursday night at the same time, which will be 6 o'clock Pacific time, 9 o'clock Eastern. Ryan, final thoughts here on this first round. A lot of fun, especially that pro race. That was some of the best racing I think I've seen in a long time here in ACC.
Best sim race that I've had the privilege to call, I have to say. 5 cars racing for the lead for 25 minutes nonstop. It was great. Really enjoyed it. Great to see that some of the friends and family were having fun as well in the AM race. Put on a nice show for us too, and just couldn't be happier to be a part of this whole deal.
Thanks so much again for watching. Remember that CrowdStrike Every Second Counts. We'll see you again on January 14th for our second round from Barcelona here on CrowdStrike Racing. My name's Kyle Heyer with Ryan Marine. We'll see you next time.